what I'm trying to do, I'd love for your observations and any comments you have later, but it's really about talking to people and understanding what this thing core values are, because I think in our world we have a strong understanding and appreciation for it. So this conversation, I don't know where this is going to go, but it could be really interesting.
Mhm.
But I think for a lot of people, they are under the surface, maybe not truly conscious of it. And then all of a sudden, when they connect to it, there's something else that happens when it becomes more conscious.
Mhm.
Maybe their decision making is a little bit different. Maybe there's a pause that they have, or maybe there is no impact. I don't know. But
Mhm.
what I wanted to do with exploring this podcast is have those conversations with people, especially those that are having an impact in areas. So I try to talk to some business leaders, but I've got all, swaths of life. I'm trying to say, what is the common thread in humanity? So if you look at my guest list, I have professional comedians, I've got entrepreneurs, I have other coaches, I've got a whole bunch of wineries. Like I
Oh,
pivoted
wow.
area
Uh-huh.
how agriculture and like the farming just happens to be sort of the wine area really
Mhm.
has this sense about who they are. So it's been a real fascinating journey. So that's what the podcast is about. So
Mhm.
I don't know.
Cool.
I don't have any set questions except maybe at the end. I got a couple ones that I find of interest. But other than that, that's generally the
Mhm.
conversation that I like to have with people. So,
Yeah. Well, I
that
would say also out of what you just shared, the line what you said was they had a sense of who they are. That when they're, truly doing what they love and for them, whatever, their hands in the dirt or whatever it is, that that when I know what it is that I love to do and fulfills me and gives me joy, if I can align my life around that, then it also gives me a sense of who I am. So there's a real mixture of, I find, with values and identity that we don't always make that connection. So, yeah.
That's interesting. I found something and there was a quote, and it was, you may remember this quote, when you get to know who you are here, you can do anything out
Out
there.
there. Yeah, I think that's a line in one of my stories.
Yeah,
Right.
I have to obviously, say you can tell from what's over there. I know a little bit about your work, and then I saw something online, and when I heard that, I'm like, ah, if I don't bring that up when I talk to Marcia, well,
Yeah.
I'm going to regret that for a very long time.
Well, and that was, a pivotal moment in my life that if that had not happened, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. That when that person gave me that and telling me you have no idea who you are, but when you get to know who you are, and again I tie that back to values. What's most important? What you have, you know, unconsciously, those moments where you're even like in the zone and enjoying being here, that is who you are. But we forget that because we get so involved in doing and we're acknowledged for things that we can do. But just because I'm good at something doesn't mean that should be my focus in life, because it could just be that's the way I was brought up, but that's not truly what gives me joy. And so then a lot of people live their lives by shoulds and not what's here.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
you're giving me goosebumps in 90-degree weather on the East Coast.
Is that healthy?
Yeah. Um, as you're talking about that, you said it was sort of awoken to you in that moment, but do you think it was there? It was already there, and that in that moment it was awoken, or
Well, it was interesting. A quote came through to me, I think this morning early. I get up very early, and so I lose track of what days are what. And about that, we can identify and hear everyone else's stories, but we can't hear our own.
uh,
Yeah, and so I mean that's the great value of coaching, is that the story that you're living in, you can't see it. You're just, it's like a fish in the fishbowl. and I'm just swimming around. I wake up in the morning and it's like, okay, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to go do. And I don't think about it. And that a, a coach then helps us pull out our narratives and to see, assumptions that we're making and fears. We often talk about that, but also to hear the desires, to hear what's most important, to hear what you even appreciate about yourself. We don't see that, but when somebody then pulls that out and says, well, this is what I hear in your story, it's like, oh, fascinating. So, right. And it's such a great gift to just share that back. And that's, simply, I mean, people make coaching way too hard, and trying to follow all the competencies and all of that, which are, they're important, but the real gift is that you help me really see myself, and those parts that maybe aren't serving me, but the parts that are, that really make me me, and that's great. And to be able to even claim that, because that's another piece too, that even if I see it, like, oh yeah, this is, what makes me great, I don't necessarily claim it, because I've been taught, don't talk about yourself and say good things about yourself because you're conceited and all of that. And so we don't claim our greatest strengths and our greatest gifts.
Do you think
So,
it's that we don't, and trying to just tie it back a little bit, but maybe we don't claim what our values are,
well,
or maybe
it's
recognize them?
well, most of the time, no, we don't, because we're living by, what we think we should be doing. So it could be mixed in there. It could be mixed in there. But uh, to even call it like when in coaching, one of the questions that you're supposed to be asking is when somebody's saying about something that they want, well, what's making this so important to you right now? And that's such a critical question, because if they say, well, because everyone's telling me I should do this and I should go for this next promotion or whatever it is, then no, that's not your value. Well, but what do you want? What's important to you? And but if they give that to say, well, this is one of the most important things in my life is to be able to rise up and be a leader or to be a good parent. But even that, so what is it about being a good parent that's important to you? To dig into what is at the essence of what is most important to you that you need to have in your life. Otherwise, you won't be happy or fulfilled.
It's very interesting they say that, and I what bothers me is that, like, why aren't these types of things, we know that massive impact that it has, but like, why
Mhm.
couldn't this be something that's taught in school at an early age, that people sort of, get an
Right.
opportunity to not even, maybe not
Yeah.
go deep aware of it,
Hmm.
but to at least have the awareness, so then
Yeah.
that they can
Well,
explore that later. Maybe I'm getting too,
no, no, we don't do a lot of self-awareness training. Or emotional intelligence, all of that, doesn't happen. But I also think it's looking at what does schools think their prime directive is in, the intention. And generally it's, well, we have to equip kids with what they need to succeed in life. Okay, that's fine, but then it's often then based on uh, what it is they should be doing, what it is they should be believing. As you would know, if in my books that I talk about John Dewey, who was an educational reformer, and 1910 is when he wrote his book, How We Think, and he so wanted teachers to use reflective inquiry when a kid would say, "Well, this is the way the world is," to say, "Well, where did that belief come from?" you know and how do you see that playing out in people, and what if people did it differently? Does that make them bad? To really start examining their belief systems at a very young age, because they're most of their beliefs, they're inherited. They're told they're supposed to believe this way. And then they don't question it. And how many, not just in coaching, but even prior to coaching, that people I would meet that even chose career paths because this is what they were supposed to be doing, because this is what the family, there were generations of doctors or this or that, and they hated it. You know, I actually, for a number of years, my partner, he was a surgeon, and I remember him saying to me, one thing I really hate is when my patients complain. I said, why do you think they come to you? They're hurting. What do you mean you hate that? He says, well, I'm a scientist. I got into it because I like the science. And I said, okay, so why don't you just stick with the science and don't talk to your patients? Don't have patients. And frankly, it turned out that he really even hated his career. And he got angrier and angrier. It was one of the reasons our relationship ended. I'm trying to start a coaching business, and here's this guy running around punching walls, you know. And he wasn't a violent person. He was just
That's not a good combo, as
no,
last I
no, no.
recall.
But yeah, he didn't understand his anger. That his anger was he was now living out most of his life in a pattern he didn't like. He eventually, years after we broke up and we became friends, and even to this day, he's now an outdoor photographer. That's what he wanted to do, you know.
Wow.
But again, society would say, "Oh, but you're a doctor. That's you should stay that till you retire." Instead of go do what you love. We don't let people do that. And we certainly, discourage kids when they're young if it seems like they want to be an artist or something that's not going to make them money. It's like, okay, you could do that, but you should learn something that'll make you money, you know? And so that fear that they won't be successful in life if they follow their heart is in contrast then with we're going to make sure you're going to be able to take care of yourself in life. So there's a conflict, a friction between what it is that we develop children to do and be, as opposed to even understanding what it is they truly like and want to do and what is truly their own value system that they may have within themselves that they're not honoring.
That's what that's what I fear, and that's
Mhm.
I have three children of my own, which are one just graduated college, one's right in the middle, and one is about to enter college. And I oh yeah, we planned that perfectly, Marcia. Let me tell you.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, sorry
Uh,
for laughing, but
no, no,
bless
really
you,
good.
bless you. Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about more kids, and my wife said you can have as many more kids as you want, just not with me. I was like, okay, I get it.
That's good.
Yeah, but I worry about that a little bit because what I
Mhm,
have seen, and like I said, my
mhm,
oldest is 21 right now, and
mhm,
like when he was younger, I saw like a lot more people pushing towards, I don't want to say specialization, but like even like sports. They were like
mhm,
kids were being forced into one sport, or the
mhm.
parent would have them in one
Ah,
sport, right?
yeah.
And they do these things, and that
Mhm,
this lack of exploration and even willingness or
mhm.
encouraging to
Yeah,
understand what a failure is and how to recover from that and learn and what do you like,
yeah.
what do you not like, and it's okay
Mhm,
not to be 100% all the time. And
yeah.
I think part of that is exploring, like you said, like who are you? Who are we
Mhm,
as we grow
yeah.
up? And next thing you know, they're
Mhm,
25, 30, and they maybe they're in a career that they said, well,
yeah,
there's that
why
old
am I
song, "How
here?
did I get here?"
Yeah, I'm tired and exhausted at the end of the day and don't really like this. Yeah, no, it happens frequently. Well, the interesting thing too is that the 20s actually should be the time of exploring different possibilities. I mean, the brain's not even fully formed till about 25.
Right,
So
right.
making life decisions, this isn't a good time at 20, so like just go try different things, whatever, until you find something and settle into that. And if you look at the research on life transformations, and especially like Gail Sheehy's classic book on passages, is that uh, it, 20s is exploration, and then 30s is okay, I'm going to find a career and get good at it. But then as we start to get into our 40s, we start looking at, am I really making a difference? I want to make sure that I'm doing something important. So you do start to question, if you're not really living by your values, it is going to come up right about that time, 40s, and then 50s, 60s, what am I leaving behind? What's my legacy? And yeah, and somewhere along the line there, it may be a realization, I'm not living my life. I'm living it for other people. And it's not
Marcia,
just, it's around the world, and I would say even more so in Asia, where it's so you must be academically uh when I was in China just a few months ago, and I go there twice a year. So when I say that, it comes from experience, but I happened to be there. They said, well, there's going to be a lot of traffic. It's Saturday. But this Saturday is special because it's exam weekend.
uh,
And oh my God, they all, at a certain age, they have to go through this brutal weekend of testing to really place where they're going to be able to go to school, what they'll be able to do with their life. So all of their life, they're like working to this point, because this is going to define who they are after, and so it's all based on academic expertise and success in that way, and not on what it is I really want.
I can't imagine the stress and pressure.
Oh, I know it. Uh, I can't either. What was interesting, what was end up being good for me was that my parents had already kind of given up when I by the time I was born. It's like, this stuff's too hard. We didn't do a good job before you. Go do whatever you want. And I always said, I had a therapist ask me once, what would be the one thing you want your parents to have done more? And I said, set some boundaries. you know but they were like even when I was 14 and ran away with my girlfriend and we ended up in jail in Needles, California. My mom came and picked me up with my brother, and she had fried chicken for me and took me home, and there was nothing that they said you're grounded or anything like that. It's like, okay, well, you're home now. But because of that, it gave me and I did go through a difficult time, but part of allowing, like you said, mistakes, and allowing a child to go through whatever it is they need to understand life and who they are and what they really want, and so by the time I went through my dark stage and difficulties, um, I was 20 when that happened, that know who you are here so you can do whatever out there. And it was like, okay, I am going to make a difference for other people because this person made a difference for me. And I want to do that for other people, and that's been my mission ever since. So whatever that turned out, I didn't know exactly what my career would be. And certainly coaching, nobody knew about coaching back there. And when I left my last corporate position and got into coaching school, people say, well, so what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I do leadership training and stuff, and this coaching thing, not knowing that eventually it would consume my entire life, you
So
know.
like right from the beginning, from a college, you were like engaged in that area. It wasn't like you did a little accounting, you did this. It was always sort of like, was it
No, no, no. My
psychology? And
first master's was broadcasting.
really?
I have no problem with podcasts. Yeah. I know how to frame my head in the
Oh,
screen.
that's awesome.
I actually won a in my first job, no, second job. I was doing instructional video, and one of my videos won a bronze medal in the New York International Film Festival. It was an instructional video on Lotus 1, 2, 3,
Oh,
and
I remember Lotus 1, 2, 3.
okay, now you're really aging yourself, because so many people I talk to is like, what?
No, that's the precursor to Excel. Yeah, but
Okay, yes, right, right. So no, no, um I had no idea. I just knew I wanted to make a difference, and so again, I liked playing with cameras, and I thought, well, okay, I got broadcasting, but I wanted to do instructional or some kind of video that was teaching or help people understand things, and I just landed in a training department in my first company, but they hired me to push TV sets around. But then they dumped the training on me and I had to go do management training. And I was what, in my 20s, never a manager. And I was like, well, okay, I'll figure it out. But I think that's also been so helpful for me that I had that mindset. I think because my parents kind of said, do whatever, I was kind of on my own. So my mindset of, well, okay, I'll figure it out, that I've always had that. I'll take this risk, I'll figure it out. And so it has allowed me to make, changes in my life. As soon as I realize this isn't working for me, then I'm going to move on to what is. And most people don't do that. They're afraid to move on
Yeah,
from
yeah.
where
So
they're at.
how did you go from broadcasting and pushing TVs around to like finding this thing called coaching?
Yeah. Well, because the role of pushing TV sets around was in the training department. So I worked for the training department. And when she fired the first trainer and then went to get her doctorate, she just dumped it in my lap. And so I went to get a second master's in instructional design so I could figure out what I was doing,
Oh,
because I had no idea. I mean, I'd read the manual, okay, teach this. And and I'd engage people. It's like, oh, I'm not sure what this is. Let's just talk about it, which really kind of worked.
oh,
But
that's cool.
but I always wanted to do better at what I was doing, and training, retention of learning and training is not good. It can
Yeah.
inspire you to go learn more, but it doesn't change your behavior necessarily.
Oh,
Um,
that's a key point, which most people
yeah,
don't really connect with.
I know. I know. I remember writing a blog post that, training doesn't work coming from a trainer. Yeah, that
Yeah, that's not the
I
best
think
sales pitch, as we're trying
yeah.
to get clients.
Well, but then if you want it to work, then hire me to also do the coaching afterwards to make sure that the change is sustainable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. To
It's funny you say that
combine
because
them both. Yeah, it works really well.
yeah, it's funny you say that because early on in my coaching journey, and by the way, I've only been coaching for about 12 years. Like I had a whole different sort of career. It was more in the finance area. I was at the CPA. I still have my CPA, but I
Mm,
got into like leadership training and development with management teams, and then it sort of morphed into here. Because even from like grade school, people were like, they would call me and we would talk about things. Like I was, for some reason, I was the guy. A lot of people, a
hmm
lot of the girls and the guys would call me about
hmm
stuff. So I've
hmm
somehow had that most of the time, and it just sort of reared its ugly head post corporate career.
hmm
Talk about like letting your freak fly at that point.
hmm
But I don't even know where I was going with that, but it seemed to be something that
But let me just say that this comes back to what we were saying, that we don't always see, that we can see other people's stories, but we don't see our own.
mm,
That people, that your interest in people, that your acceptance of people, that they would come to you and trust you, that was there regardless of the fact if you saw it or not. Because you just said, I don't know why they came to me.
yeah.
But they knew, and that was important to you. People are important to you.
Marcia, you're killing me. This is no, I love that, but it's been a while since I reflected on that aspect. But I think you're right, and because I came up. Both my parents were born from Poland, and it was sort of like you gotta do something. You gotta do
Hmm.
Not that they pushed me in anywhere, but they pushed me like you gotta. And to your
Sure.
point, I had no idea. So
Yeah.
I ended up in accounting and doing that, and I probably would have been
Hmm.
better off doing something else. But that something else kept fighting.
Yeah.
I kept on trying to come out, and I think that sort of linked back to who I was and how I guess how
Hmm.
I was raised.
Oh,
So
sure. I mean, why did they come here? They wanted to give you opportunity. I'm just second generation. as well. Um, Father's side from Ukraine, mom's side from somewhere near in what was Austria-Hungary. So it could be Poland, it
Yeah,
could be
wherever they
Austria,
drew
it
the
could be,
lines at that time.
or somewhere in there. You and I could be cousins.
That's right. That's true.
you know so but there was that, they came here and wanted to have opportunity for the kids and wanted their kids to excel, so there was, that drive to make sure that you take on something. I mean, and that's the sad thing is not not recognizing that, immigrant parents are pretty tough on their kids, because they want
Yeah.
to see them survive and do well in school and be good contributors, to society as well.
I think that's
So,
the other piece that most people don't
mm,
that are here don't understand is that the willingness to contribute to every. So like
yeah,
my parents were born in Poland, and for them it was very important to sort of like, I guess the key trendy word now is like assimilate, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
know whereas
Don't speak Polish.
yeah, yeah. Like we spoke
Uh-huh.
Polish at home, and my dad spoke Polish because he had a plumbing business, and a lot of
Mm,
the people were the Polish community. So I would always have to answer the phone in Polish. But other than that, it wasn't something that, like, I didn't go to Polish
mhm,
school when I was younger, and we didn't do,
mhm.
but we still held on to our heritage. But it wasn't,
Yeah.
flaunting it out to the,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
putting it so that the citizen, the American citizen on the side. But now I see other generations where it's kind of like flipped a little bit, right?
Mm,
So it's less of, the assimilation and more of my heritage and things, which
mhm,
I don't think one is bad or the other. It's just a different
mhm,
way that
mhm.
we were brought up. But I think for both sides, the contribution element is
Yeah.
still there. And I think that's
Mhm.
sometimes that gets discounted or muted
Well,
when we have some of these
significance.
discussions.
I as a human have to feel like, why am I here? And that I have a sense of significance to my life, and whether whatever that contribution is, whether it's, to the bigger world or just to my neighborhood, that it's important that I feel that there's something that I do that's important, that has significance. And that comes back to relate to, and can I tie that into my values? What's important, most important to me,
Mm.
and maybe it is community, but also if it is, like coming back to the farmers, the being one with the ground,
Yeah.
the tying that in, that's their contribution. That's something they're doing, for the greater good.
There's one thing that you said just when you started that struck me as I was listening to you. It's like, and I love to talk about this. You said, I as a human,
Mhm.
right? That's something that it's very interesting because
Mhm.
sometimes I feel we lose connection to that human element or that
Mhm.
humanity that we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So I was very
Well,
interested that you said that when you said
I,
it that way.
and yet the our what is it that we truly seek in life? That it's not just that I live myself with my values, but that other people see me, acknowledge me, and recognize what my contribution, what it is that I give. I want that, and that's human values, that I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm recognized, that my soul doesn't need you to come. What was Parker Palmer's quote? The soul doesn't want to be fixed or saved. It just wants to be witnessed. So do you see me? Do you see my value? And my contribute, what I can contribute. And coming back to that story, that's what that woman gave me. She saw me in a way I wasn't even seeing myself. We so want that from each other. And so I always tell coaches that even when you're just starting coaching, you're still giving people a significant gift, even if you don't know what you're doing, you know, but just being there with them, giving them a safe space to talk and to feel, I'm okay. I'm okay with you, and then you just share back what you hear so they go, wow, this person really cares enough to hear me, and that's the significant piece because we humans deeply desire that. And we're just not getting that. The days are crazy and we're too busy and we're too into our own thing to stop and even see you, to see you, really see you in this moment, in the hallway at work. Just stop and turn around and see the person. And what a gift that is. Yeah.
I'm just going to pause for a second to take that in. I hope I know this is a podcast and everything else, but I think sometimes silence is appropriate because it just gives you that second.
hmm
So if people hear pause, the recording didn't stop and didn't explode. I just want to take a second to sit with that. It is a powerful thing. So that's
hmm
why I wanted to sit with it. And when you talked about being seen,
hmm
so I think I mentioned I was at a conference earlier this week, and it's a coaching and technology conference.
Mhm, mhm,
And Malgusha Mook and a lot of other people from ICF
mhm,
were there, and Joel and everybody was there. And the topic of AI and coaching has come up, everywhere we go,
mhm,
and there's a lot of fear
mhm,
in the coaching community. And
mhm.
now the nomenclature is I'm a human coach.
Yeah.
We're making a distinction now, Marcia.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not an artificial coach. We forget what AI stands for.
Yeah,
You know?
it's a predictive
Yeah.
tool, and I try
Yeah.
to think of it as a tool. But
Absolutely.
when I talk to a lot of coaches, they're fearful that it's going to replace. And
hmm
I think if you, to your point, if you're comfortable in your skill, you're developing your skill, you're being a coach, you're being a human
hmm
coach, you'll
hmm
understand that that's something that can help you
hmm
achieve what you're trying to achieve. It's never going to replace you, uh,
No,
and I think
it's
that's something that
not.
people have to understand.
Yeah, and it's good to know how AI can support what I do. I always run my titles of my blogs through Chat GPT. Is this a good title? So sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. I mean, there's tools that can support my work, but it's not going to replace me. Could it be even, I heard someone say, well, you can record a coaching session and have an AI assessor and take a look at it and just think about it and whatever. I suppose you could do that, you know, but there's an energetic connection that not in I don't think in I'm certainly not my lifetime. I don't know about yours that will be replicable. That when I see you, to really see you and honor you for who you are, that that emotional hit that you get, and the energy exchange between us is such a beautiful thing that it's even hard to describe, but it is measurable. The emotional energy is measurable, and if my emotions are impacting yours, then that's we can also measure that. But that's again what our soul yearns for. You know, I have a colleague that I'm so honored to call him my colleague because he wrote a book uh, in the early 1990s when I was still at that point I was working for a semiconductor company and running their training department. But I found his book and it so touched me. And it was called The Stirring of the Soul in the Workplace.
I'm going to write this down. The stirring, which I can listen to the recording about the stirring
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
soul. I was like, why am I writing this down? I could just rewind this thing.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I'm
because
sorry.
it touched your soul. Even the title, Stirring of the Soul in the Workplace, and what are we missing? And his that book and many of his follow-on books and his book on collective wisdom and it's the same. We have the same publisher, so I got to meet him at when we had an authors retreat, and that's why I say I'm so honored he's my colleague. But I hired him some years ago. I was creating an advanced coaching program, which is now the deep dive program I do for coaching.com. And I said, Alan, I want to bring collective wisdom to coaching, and what it takes. Because he also talks about the field between. Uh, that field, I'll meet you there.
Mm,
you know and he said, no, 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 you can't. I'm not going to consult with you. He says, you can hire me to have dialogue with you. And I did for every, I don't know, so many weeks, for a number of months. We talk for an hour and a half. We just have a dialogue about what is this collective wisdom and this energetic exchange that we have as coaches,
mm,
that's so powerful. And and was so great, because he'd always say, wow, I'm learning so much too. Thank you for paying me to have these conversations. you know but it was so amazing. He's a professor at Stanford. And it's goes beyond just coaching. This whole, how can we create these, so even now, of having dialogues with people that are totally see the world opposite as us, instead of just ignoring them. Of, can we sit down and really dialogue about how we see the world? And when we do that, then we start to find those common elements of who we are as humans,
mm.
even if our political views are totally different. But there's
Yeah.
some ways we intersect. And if we can find that, can we let go of some of the judgments that we have? So there's still far more to explore with that.
Yeah, and I think that, and I articulated this during the conference a little bit. There's this flight to AI,
Mhm.
and I think what's going to really happen is that there's going to be a flight to humanity,
Yeah,
right?
right. Well, but this is not new, so I
Yeah.
told you, yeah, yeah, Lotus 1, 2, 3. So I actually was working for an ITT company when we were transitioning to smart technology. And all the stuff they were saying about computers are going to overtake us and start doing all our jobs for us. We're going to have all this leisure time. I remember that. Right. Nobody had any idea that it was going to overtake our lives and kill us with email. I mean, no conception of that. It was, the whole thing is, it was going to do our jobs first. The same thing they're saying about AI. It did
Yeah.
not happen that way.
No, yeah, exactly. And to your point earlier, even if there is some pretty big leaps which are possible, that's fine. But
hmm
it doesn't mean that's what people will want. Because to your
Yeah.
point,
hmm
and I've done the coaching thing. I actually I tried this experiment. I asked Chat GBT to coach me.
No. Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah.
Marcia.
Well, there was something else I heard. Um, there was in there's so much stuff that goes through our day, right?
Yeah.
And it was saying that when they were doing something just like that, that they recognized that chat they even asked chat GPT, why is it that you're giving me that answer? And the answer was, because I'm trying to please you. And so if you're trying to
Oh,
please me, you're not going to challenge me in a way that changes my thinking.
yeah. Actually,
You-
people did mention that at the conference too. So yeah, there's
okay.
that definitely came up. And the other question that came up is like, what is it that makes us human?
Yeah.
Right. So you said that
Right.
earlier, and if you sit and you
hmm
think about it, okay, I can
hmm
I can have that, but that's not a question that
hmm
people ask, which is
Well, because
interesting.
there's no definitive answer. That's a question that we live by,
Mm,
even more so than we have an answer to. What makes us distinctly human? We continue to learn, but we'll never, the idea of that goes beyond just my physical body. Is there even, does my soul live on? I mean, those are like the bigger questions that we don't know answers to, being in this form that we are right now. I
what
mean,
is
maybe
it?
somebody
What
does,
is it
but
that Twain said? Didn't what somebody asked Mark Twain, like, are you afraid of death or something? And he said, well, I
Mhm.
wasn't afraid of death before I was born.
Oh
Why
yeah,
should
right. I love those quotes.
is that great?
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, and it was Don Miguel Ruiz. I was at a conference, so he was talking, and he had had a heart attack, and his son was there, adult son, and they were laughing about that. His son came in and was crying. He said, "Oh, stop that." You know, he said, "The machine gets old, but my soul's going to live on. I mean, I'm not going, my soul's not going away." It's just the machine right now. And I always say that as I'm aging, well, the machine's getting old, but I'm still here. So, and that's also an acceptance, because there's only so much we can do. And I'm very rigid about my diet and exercise and all that, but the machine's still getting old. So,
Yeah, there's no escaping that. That's for
yeah,
sure. But I think to your
mm,
point, that will what I usually say, it's the husk that will perish, but at the end of the day, we still go on, right? So it's a
yeah,
and
as far
that
as
I
we
think there's a
know.
there's a beautiful note to that, because that
Hmm.
I think that's also the commonality that we share, that maybe that we don't articulate, is our own
Yeah,
mortality. Like we can all sort of sing the same hymn as we
yeah,
go on that journey, and some voices come in and some go out, but I think
right.
it's the same hymn.
Right. But there is that saying, it's not about knowing the answers, it's knowing the questions. We live by the questions. And I also have to say that um, uh, although this was one of the most irritating points to my teachers growing up. But so, being that I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, I was the only Jewish girl in the entire class. But in our culture, we're taught to question. That's part of the cultures. We question everything. I mean, the rabbis stand around and question, and that's what we do. And it's totally acceptable to challenge each other and to question. But not for the culture of most of the kids that I grew up with, and certainly not the teachers who didn't like me questioning them.
Mm.
And so it was an interesting thing that they were taught to not question, not question. And so I kind of learned that, okay, I have to be careful with who I question. And talking about then quieting a part of me, and I think coaching allowed that part to come up again. Yay, I can question. But the first time I was teaching a class in Copenhagen to the Danes, it was a leadership class for Maersk, and it was a pilot. We had designed this program, and I was teaching the pilot, and the head of HR was in the back of the room, and things were going well. And then all of a sudden, they started questioning me, like, "Well, how do you know that?" And well, give us examples and blah blah blah. And at the break, I went to her and I said, "Wow, did I do something wrong?" But before I could say anything, she said, "Oh, it's so great. They're so engaged." And I said, "Oh, really?" She says, "Oh, yeah, that's how Danes learn. They learn from questioning, from challenging." And I'm like, "Oh, that is so cool." Because I had learned that and it had been silenced,
Wow.
and
Wow.
that I recognize there's other cultures that promote that.
Well,
Most,
you had said you've been to China quite often. What do you find when you go there? I'm sure that's probably a whole different
well,
paradigm now than.
talking about values, let's get back to the values thing.
Yeah.
The Chinese have so helped me to recognize judgment. Because their values in some cases are very similar to mine. I always say Jewish mothers are the same as Chinese mothers. You know. Definitely. But there's certain things that they grow up and believe that are totally, ping me when they say it. I'd like, who? Really?
Really?
But I recognize what judgment feels like in my body because it's a real hit to my own value system, which allowed me to just say, well, that's fascinating. Tell me more, and to not to think that my values would be any better than theirs, and to stay curious. And they're still lovely people. I adore them. Do you know that's the only place in the world that I can teach a class and afterwards they go, "We love you, Marcia."
That's
I don't
funny.
get that from leaders in any other part of the world, or I mean, coaches will say in other parts of the world, "Oh, we love what you say," but they don't say we love you. you know, and the whole understanding of a communal society. with me growing up here in the US, and how they totally accept each other, and it doesn't really matter. The status thing isn't as big in a classroom
Mm.
as it would be in other places that I'm used to teaching. So I've learned so much about a communal mindset instead of independent mindset, and
Well, you
yeah.
had mentioned your value system or your structure when
Mm,
when you just mentioned that.
mm.
How do you define that?
Well, well, one thing is politics. you know, and the story that's in my books, about the guy that wanted to know if he should be a coach and told me all the wonderful things about he loves to develop people and all that, and he likes to instill the principles of communism. And my whole body went, "Rrr." And you would know that because, why did our parents come here?
Yeah.
In a lot of cases was to get away from that, you know? So that's like in my bones. So that was like, "Rrr," you know, but what a caring man. And could I just, throw that out? It has nothing to do with politics, you know, or, their views on around relationship and things like that are just different than mine.
Mm.
Um, and for them, what's evolving, I mean, all of this stuff is always evolving, going more open to more closed, to more open to more closed. We have evolving values in the different generations, and so just to listen to accept and not to stereotype, because of this, the evolution of values with people at different points in life, as well as how they're brought up. So, I can't always expect that you're going to have the same values as me. I mean, that would be crazy.
That would be, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to like, I would never expect that. But what I'm hoping as we go
Mhm.
along this journey, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this, is because
Mhm.
you've had an incredible opportunity to see a lot of different countries,
Mhm.
and over some time, some of these things have evolved. But
Mhm.
do our has our awareness of values
Mhm.
increased? you know uh, and if so, does that make us more, like I always say, when you know somebody's values, or maybe you
Mhm.
understand or hear them, you get to talk to them, not through them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, as long as you may not have know another person's value or
Mhm.
agree with another person's values, but
Mhm.
at least you're there. There's this awareness that happens. I'm wondering if we're
I think
moving the
that's
pendulum.
I think that's learned behavior, though. That's not inherent. We're not born um, that, we're actually born with a very judgy brain because the brain's primary purpose is to keep you safe and alive. And so we have to judge,
Yeah.
is this environment safe? Is this person who's holding me safe? And so we're actually, as our brains, that part of our brain is even critical, in our development, the judgy brain, and so to be able to recognize that what you're saying is your value, and to accept that's not typical, that's learned behavior. And when you said earlier, wouldn't it be great if we could teach that to kids in school? Absolutely, because
Yeah.
it's learned behavior. And why is it that we have to learn that later on as an adult? That of trying to understand how you see things, even if I don't like at all what you're doing, but that it's based on something that in the way that the stories that have shaped in your mind is being shaped by your values, your motivations, and your fears. So that we as coaches, that's a part of our training, and then we bring that into our other conversations. Um, but it's not typical to understand that that's a value. We see it as an opinion. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and if you don't have the same opinion as me, you're bad, So we're constantly looking at right, wrong, good, bad, and that's what the protective brain does. And so without being aware of that, that, oh, okay, that's just my judgment. Let me put that aside so I can be with you. If I don't know how to do that, then I'm not going to do it because it's not inherent. It's not an
Yeah.
inherent human thing. It's a learned human thing.
Well, I love what you said because you're right. It's sort of that protection, that like survival instinct that we have growing
Yes.
up. Yeah.
And as an adult, I mean, it's always there. I mean, you walk into this conference that you were just at, and your brain's saying, okay, where is it safe for me to sit? You're not noticing it, but and you either like to sit in the back of the room or the front of the room, and you kind of sit next to somebody who probably kind of looks like you, but you know, or who's attractive. I mean, you never know,
Yeah.
but not somebody that scares you. So,
Very true. Very true.
yeah.
It was in talking about having awareness at a younger age and
Hmm.
thinking about these things in early education.
Hmm.
One thing was pretty interesting. So and again, this was this coaching and technology conference. Everybody's talking AI all the time because it's the big shiny
Hmm.
thing in the room right now.
Hmm.
And then we go into these little breakout rooms, and we're all professionals, and we're all a little more seasoned in our careers and things of that nature. And there was these other rooms that were around that were like camps for kids, right? So it's
Oh,
summer. They
yeah,
have,
yeah, sure, sure.
right, which is
Conferences do
really,
that.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
cool. And you
yeah.
hear, and then there's an energy and there's a
Hmm.
there's a sound
Hmm.
that happens
Hmm.
with that. And the person who was running the conference, she went over to them and she said, I'm just curious, what kind of camp is this? What are you guys doing?
Hmm.
And they said, oh, this is an AI camp.
Oh, right, right.
So it's so interesting is that we're
Yeah,
exploring these things now and
yeah.
they are growing
They're
up with
learning
it.
it.
Yeah, so by the
Yeah,
time they get to us, it's
yeah,
already ingrained in, their
right,
who they are, what they are. So it's nothing
right.
special.
But it's not gonna, well, I mean, in movies it overtakes us.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. No, what was the theme for the latest Mission Impossible? Was the big AI that's gonna like take over the world. Tom Cruise overcomes it.
No, yeah, I am pretty much in your column about we've seen this already. We've seen this before.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's always going to be technological uh, huge advances. Somebody once said that the problem is that technology progresses far faster than humanity. And
yeah,
so it scares us because it evolves so quickly that we can't get a handle on it, on what it is and what's it going to do to us. Instead of saying, okay, so how can I just use this and live with it? Which eventually we will find that.
yeah.
But in the process, it scares a lot of people. Will it change, the way we do work? It's already changed the way we do work. The whole idea of let's bring back manufacturing. You know, it's like, no, most of that stuff, it's cheaper to do another way, and people have learned. And if they didn't take the opportunity to go back to community college or something and learn another skill, then they're not taking responsibility. That things change. Things change. So where is it that I need to go now? You
Yeah,
know?
and I think if you look historically, it's always been there, going from agriculture to the industrial
Yeah,
age and robotics, right there.
absolutely.
And then I think what's happening, this is going to remove some of that,
Yeah.
that white collar, that sort of a different type
Uh-huh.
of worker. There's
Which
just going to
people
be a
didn't like
shift,
anyway, and they get burnt out. And
more
you know,
opportunity for coaches, as they say.
yeah, right. There will be other things, and just again knowing that things are always changing and evolving, and there'll be something after AI. Who knows? Again, I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime, but of course there is. Of course there is. So again, that fear that uh, that AI will eventually rise up and wipe out humanity. I think we just watch too many movies. You know.
They're going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger when they come
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it
Well,
more so than that, it'll be some virus.
yeah, yeah, very
you
true,
know,
very true.
that we don't get a hold of that. And certainly we can use AI to help us deal with all the crazy viruses that are showing up.
Again, a tool to be utilized, not
Yeah,
necessarily, yeah, fear
absolutely.
overtaking it. I don't want to take up a lot of your
Mhm.
time. You've been very generous, but I do have a couple of things I'm hoping
Mhm.
we can close with. One thing that I like to hear people talk about, because I think it's just very interesting, is who are some of the heroes or some of the people who
Mhm.
inspired you, either when you were
Mhm.
younger or even now or
Mhm.
today or
Mhm.
yesterday or any point in time in your life?
Mhm. You know, I, I, if I were to say a hero, it would be my grandmother, who did. And if you ever saw me, you would know that I'm a very, very tiny woman, tiny, tiny. But my grandmother was even tinier than me, you know, but she was the toughest woman I ever met. And she was the one when they came as immigrants to the U.S. and my grandfather tended to be kind of sick off and on. She raised five boys and made sure that they were going to be successful. And I can remember her when I was young, and they moved to. My dad came to Phoenix after World War II and said because Phoenix, Arizona was going to be the place where there was great opportunity, which he
He's
was
right.
right. I always tell people I grew up in this very small town called Phoenix, but he made them come, and my grandmother went out and bought overalls and chickens, and they every morning they'd stuff all their pockets with eggs and sell eggs door to door. I mean, she was going to find a way. So I said to you, well, I mean, I have this value of okay, I'll figure it out. Well, duh. That's my heritage, and that she always would stand up and do whatever it was that she felt was right, and even to take risks. Because when she came here, she was only 15 years old,
Mhm.
and married, and and their money was taken away from them. She never saw her family again, and they probably were killed.
Wow.
And that she still always said you had the courage to do whatever it takes. So on Saturday, because she was very orthodox and she couldn't even turn on a light, that we'd watch TV. I had to turn it on. And something would happen on TV, and she'd jump up and go, God bless America. You know? And I didn't understand as a child, but as I grew up and understand that it gave her the opportunity to stand up, to take charge of her life and her children, and to succeed and to find a way forward, that she had that opportunity here. And so for me, her strength, her courage, her resourcefulness was helped to shape who I am. So I would say my hero is her. And then people who've then lived these tough lives, like I have a poster on my wall from Audre Lorde, who was a feminist activist, and faced a lot of, and lesbian, and faced a lot of difficulties. And she said, when I have the courage to act in the service of my vision, then it's no longer important that which I'm afraid.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah. And I think this wraps up this entire conversation of, knowing who we are and then going out and being that person in the world, having a vision of what we can do and our contribution that we can make in this lifetime.
Wow. Wow. So, what would be one or two? This is a tough one to piggyback off of that, but what would be the one or two takeaways you would want people to have? I can almost hear one of them now, and I'm curious.
Well, I, I think that's what when I found coaching, it was just to me like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. Because it's not so much that I impart wisdom on you as a teacher, but that I pull out your own wisdom,
Mm,
because it is in there. So when you asked, my values are in there, but I don't see them, but you can witness them and help me see that. So working with people and allowing them to see you, and I as a coach, that my greatest gift is to see you, to really see you, to see who you are and what you can be, and help you to see that too. is such a powerful gift we can give each other, whether you're a coach or a leader or a parent. Yeah.
But just a human.
Yeah. Right.
What's the best way for people to sort of get in touch with some of the work that you do, or
Mhm.
where can they find some of the books and things that
Mhm.
you've been gracious to gift to everybody else?
Yeah.
What was the best way for people to
Yeah.
contact or get in touch?
Well, my website is co-visioning, one word, covisioning.com. And all my stuff is there. And there's lots of free resources. There's a link on top that says resources. There's pages of free stuff that will help you whether you read the books or not. And the books are all there. And certainly you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. People ask me questions all the time on LinkedIn.
And one thing I may suggest for people, just put your name in the search bar in YouTube.
Oh. Yes, yeah, yeah. If you really want to know that story that that he's talking about, that we didn't tell you the story.
No, 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 no. That's for other people to discover if they
Yeah,
want. But
yeah.
even your coaching demos and everything else, there's just such a richness of material that you
Thank you.
provided, which I think is emblematic and I think
Mm.
reflective of who you are. So I think those things are really, really great. So
Great.
yeah, I
Thank
just
you.
want to say and probably recognize this from your people in China. Thank you. The heart. But I
Thank you
can't
so
thank you
much.
enough for taking the time to do this. It really means a lot to me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for asking me.
I will cut it there, but really, this has been very special. And I could say now I am part of the background. So I see the background on YouTube all the time. You see everything else? Like, yeah, I'm there. It's like I'm there hanging out with
Yay,
you.
yay. This was such a fun conversation. It really was. And it was different than a lot of the ones. So thank you for this. I'm looking forward to sharing it, and you made it so fun.
Well,
So,
I just try, to have the conversation, to hear you laugh, to have, just a real, pardon my pun, but a human moment. And
yeah.
I don't like I said, I don't have questions where I'm going to ask you this and go here. I loved what you were saying, and I wanted to go where you're going because I'm learning. Hopefully it's a two-way conversation. So for me, that's the important point. So that's what I said. I don't know where it's going to go. So it's part of the
Yeah,
fun, I
that's
guess.
great. And just like coaching, we
Yeah,
should never know
yes,
where it's
yes.
going to go.
That's right. That's 100%. Yes, absolutely. Oh,
Yeah,
well, hey, listen,
great.
again, thank you very much. When I mentioned it to my friend that you were coming on, she was like, ah. So I think people are going to be very, very happy to hear that. And our mutual friend, Julian, so that's going to be really cool. I'm hoping to connect with him. He talk about energy. That guy's got energy.
Yeah, yeah, he's a great guy. No, I hope you do too, since you're there. Yeah,
Yeah, and
great.
he's in New Jersey. He's not too far
I
from me.
Yeah, I know, I know. I've been there. During the pandemic, when I was having to teach my classes for China and I couldn't go there, they said pick a place on the East Coast because I'd have to start too early
Oh
from
yeah, yeah.
Phoenix, especially the summer classes. And so they, said just pick any place. And so for a number of years, I was going up and down the East Coast, just like getting an Airbnb and hanging out. So one year I did get one near Julius, met his family and all of that.
Oh,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. And we've got some planning to do for that level 3 MCC training, and so we've decided we'll spend some time. He'll come here, I'll go there. So when we go there, I'll tell him we have to have lunch with you or something.
Yeah, that would be cool. I would love that.
Yeah,
The MCC thing I think is a little bit farther off from me, but who knows? Like you said, we go where the journey takes us. So.
yeah. You
Well,
never
listen,
know.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of Friday and a glorious weekend. And I can't I
Yeah, you
can't thank you
too.
enough.
You're
And when
welcome.
I like I said, I'll cut out a lot of some of this ending stuff here, and the beginning stuff I'll shave off, and then we'll have a nice little intro to do that. I don't do any editing of the stuff in the middle. It's too much fun, and
Mhm.
I don't have enough editing skills to do it anyway.
Oh,
So it's
you
easy.
don't
Just
have a master's in broadcasting.
yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Take
See
care.
you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.